Testing, testing, testing. How do I sound? Resound. How do I sound? Am I too loud for this? I think I'm good for this. Let's lower the volume down there on this and press the transition button and get me on camera talking about my situation. Hello, and welcome to the sad stream. My name's George. Sounds like I sound like a George. Looks like I'm looking like a George. I'm gonna be playing Metal Gear 2 in front of the internet because of money that I need to raise to take care of my mom in her old age, and how there are some boomers of the family who could be doing that but won't. Anyways, this is so yeah, if you are privileged and comfortable enough to be in the kind of position where you can throw around some money to support your favorite internet YouTuber people right now, any of that would definitely not only be very, very desperately appreciated, but also absolutely directly going towards a good cause of individuals dealing with trouble and getting their way out of it. Anyways, Metal Gear 2, one of my favorite games, right? One of a lot of Metal Gear Solid fans' favorite games. There are a lot of pretty convincing arguments to be made that this actually could be a contender for the peak of the series way before any of the series' formulas and tropes and vibes were already established. You kind of sound like you're going through a filter. Oh boy. Do you have a voice changer? It should. Okay, I just pressed the muted button there for a second. But there is a noise suppression filter going on. Like, maybe I could, like, lower that or something? I shouldn't have had my pitch changed or anything. But anyways, yeah, let me fiddle with all these windows that I have opened up so I can mute the VR mission music from Metal Gear Solid, because they're going to be homaging the incredibly kick-ass music from this game throughout the whole entire rest of the series, and increase the volume of the game software running here, and then skip the next intro. Ah! It's too loud, too loud! Good lord, that was loud. And skip this this intro, because there's a different one that you're intended to see first when you boot it up, and it's nuts. It's crazy. It is such a cool intro. I'm just gonna shut up and let us get soaked into the mood for a second here. Bring up the audio a little bit here. almost looks like the key art for Metal Gear Solid 1. Yeah, there we go. After almost like 4 minutes, there's finally this increase in speed and tension. That took quite a while, but boy oh boy was it an enjoyable build-up. Okie dokie. I'm actually gonna mute that game, audio for now to explain a little bit about the significance of that sequence and why it hits so good and why it hits so hard. One thing to keep in mind as you're watching through this game, if you haven't played it before, is that we're playing a game from 1990 here. And it's almost unfortunate that 1990 begins with a 9 at the third digit of that year, because 1990 was really basically 1988 part 2. The media looked like 80s media for 1 or 2 years until 92 or so. The cars looked like 80s cars. The video games for that transitionary period from 80s to 90s still very much looked like late 80s video games in the early 90s. In 1990, I want to say that one of the biggest steps that got made towards putting a more narrative focus on video game design was just having more memory on the software medium to cram more text on the screen. The other thing is, you know what, maybe that would even be number 2 compared to there just being the existence of home consoles at all. That entire intro sequence takes 6 minutes. It's pretty long. In fact, on replays, it can feel a little grating, actually. 6 minutes is a very, very long time. And before the transition of dominant video game machines going from consoles going from arcades to home consoles, there's like no way they would keep a slow suspense building steadily for 6 entire minutes at a time. Real-time, twitchy Japanese action games like this were built to get kids on and off a machine in a matter of like 2 minutes or less, even if unless they had fed so many quarters into it and become such a regular and gotten good enough at the machine to the point where their performance almost looks like a advertisement attracting other kids going off. You get good enough at an arcade game to save money and resist the frequent prompts and incentives to put another quarter in. That probably means you've already spent a wildly disproportionate amount of money on the machine, and therefore have served as a satisfactory return on investment for the game developers. For home console game designs, they don't really gotta worry about that stuff at all. A lot of those concerns about just how fast things need to be to get kids on and off the machine in a matter of 2 minutes or less is absolutely not a concern. So having just an intro to a game, let alone a 6-minute long one, is pretty darn unprecedented and grating against some standards of the time that would later turn out to be pretty darn normal standards for the future. And the other thing is the cinematic presentation of that. Most of the screen was basically black with as we could hear just some like lightweight bits of classy text, which is something that Kojima's team falls in love with for the next 20 years. Like as far late as 2015, when you boot up Metal Gear Solid 5, that screen is pitch black. They love beginning games with absolutely nothing on the screen except a tiny little itty-bitty logo poking out of pure black void. that didn't necessarily come from nowhere. It was somewhat unprecedented for the time for 1990, but when you dig into the supplementary material outside the games, you'll inevitably find a long list of media influences. One of which I am going to play for 70 seconds right now. Anyone who's a big fan of Metal Gear Solid and wants to have an understanding on like where it came from in pop culture and also what it has done and will be doing in the future in pop culture should absolutely watch a movie film called Escape from New York.
In 1988, the crime rate in the United States rises 400%.
I think it's an 84 movie. Yeah, look at that.
The once great city of New York becomes the one maximum security prison for the entire country. A 50-foot containment wall is erected along the New Jersey shoreline, across the Harlem River, and down along the Brooklyn shoreline. It completely surrounds Manhattan Island. All bridges and waterways are mined. The United States police force, like an army, is encamped around the island. There are no guards inside the prison, only prisoners and the worlds they have made. The rules are simple. Once you go in, you don't come out.
'81, okay. So, Escape from New York came out in '81. Was absolutely a big inspiration for Metal Gear 1. But between Metal Gear 1 and Metal Gear 2, like, Kojima's artistic aspirations suddenly, like, he gets hit by an epiphany or something and has a revelation about how the future of storytelling should go. And he envisions video games being a pretty darn important part of it, if not something like sort of the next natural evolution of humans telling stories in caves around fires. He goes from throwing in some cute referential references into Metal Gear 1 into Metal Gear 2 making an earnest, honest attempt at trying to change the world through the entertainment storytelling power. The newfound power that had since been unlocked by video games being able to take a more narrative bent from that bump up in memory storage technology, and also the change in the economic situation from an arcade model to a home console model. The media landscape through which this soup was thrown together and shopped for ingredients at the store from is something like 3 parts schlocky American gung-ho macho masculine military media. And then like another 1/3 part is absolutely 80s, 90s sexy Japanese booby teenager battle school robot animes. I'm gonna play us another intro from this time period. Let's see what year Gunbuster came out, because the 88. Okay, so 88, 89, 91. Within 3 years, we also have Kojima's team deciding that they are going to be ambitious enough to be cribbing off of this, which was also a very big deal at the time. This is the immediate precursor to Neon Genesis Evangelion and was made by the same company. Very, very popular Japanese robot anime that never really got popular out in the West, but the influence of Gunbuster is everywhere. Once you watch Gunbuster, you see it absolutely all over the place. You can never unsee this stuff. Here we go. So, totally not as blatant in that case. However, the similarities that we can pick out from that going on to Metal Gear 2 definitely involve thinking that flashing robot parts on the side of the screen next to the open credits is really, really cool, and also a little bit of influence of a musical riff, that musical note where both intros are going to be building suspense by stepping the progressively stepping these notes up a staircase and going boop 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 boop. All right, yeah, awesome. I'm gonna unmute the game now, get this kick-ass music going back then, press a button, and then wait again. Because if one really badass, awesome, cutting edge, years ahead of its time, wearing some very prescient media influences on sleeve intro was not enough, you get two! And this time you have some text crawl and backstory, so that'll actually be trying to provide a bit of clarity over that. My microphone voice is still a bit robot-y. Your microphone audio is popping. Am I the only one hearing that? Evidently not. Let me try lowering it by half a decibel. Okay, so Metal Gear Solid 2 came out in 1990, which is pretty much still, I mean, it technically still counts as the Cold War going on, but it's the absolute very tail end of that. And the game's not really accurately predicting a lot of a very realistic future for how the Soviet Union would completely dissolve, and it seems to think that the tensions are going to be lower in real life than they have turned out to be, with the existence of the Soviet Union still being around until '99, I want to say. At some point during that process, the US and the Soviet Union decide to get rid of all their nukes. And that seems to really contradict a lot of the more maybe pessimistic political theories that come in later in the franchise. But it also is a very, very convenient situation for a plot to develop, in which a small rogue nation getting a hold of their nukes could be a really, really big pain in the ass for both the US and USSR, which are also, like, weirdly retroactively predicted to be, like, on way more equal grounds than they have turned out to be in real life, in terms of which one is the more reliable source for longer-term decades of stability. Yeah, there's also Oilix, a microbe that can synthesize high-grade petroleum. Anxieties and panics over oil crises and climate change start happening here. So a Czech scientist who has developed a type of bacterial microbe that, I don't know, eats oxygen and poops out oil, or something like that, has been kidnapped by a rogue mercenary microstate in Central Asia that also plans to have the world's only nukes. Because in order to end the Cold War, yeah, I guess this is the thing. In order to end the Cold War, the US and the USSR both have to agree to massive amounts of nuclear proliferation that didn't happen in real life, versus the Cold War ending by the Soviet Union being unable to pay debts and convince soldiers to follow orders. We're gonna mute that for a hot second again and bring up my browser window once again so that I can flip to some influences going on here. That picture of, like, a gun with bullets sitting around is also something that feels a little weirdly unprecedented for 1990s time, where a Westerner child like me who was growing up back then was always on the, always antagonizing all the Nintendo censorship going on. And in a lot of cases, after the late 80s to late 90s, I want to say, Nintendo would require guns in video games to look like science fiction Star Wars blasters or something, not just a realistic, ordinary Beretta M92F1 or whatever it's called, with the realistic, ordinary magazine and bullets splattered about the table. And the fact that the text right there also says on top of the gun, "But there are some who don't desire peace," also seems to me to be suggesting that there's a little bit more of a moral conscience going on here. That indulging in all this media glorifying military violence and making video games glorifying it is something that this game in particular is not going to be quite as easy thinking about as others. The primary visual inspiration for the art of that story crawl is a manga called Pineapple Army here. The primary literary inspiration is some cheap airport novel reading that Kojima somehow came into contact with some way. It's called Crossfire by J.C. Pollock, who was a military intelligence officer in Vietnam who has since, like, after writing this stuff and getting unprecedented amounts of popularity with it, since tried to go back to being anonymous. But anyways, a CIA-controlled Soviet scientist unexpectedly flees to Czechoslovakia, where he tells a beautiful skating coach vital information before he dies, leaving ex-Marine Adrian Delaney to smuggle her out of her homeland. Yeah, okay, so Metal Gear's ingredients to its soup are, schlocky, cheap American media about how gung-ho and badass the military is. And then the other half is schlocky Japanese pop culture media about how badass Japanese giant robots could be. And I enjoy how much tension there is between these conflicting elements of the game's aesthetics and inspiration, because it almost sounds like there's a fight going on in some respects. And in Metal Gear 2 Manual, there's an especially interesting little blurb in the beginning about how the real character of Metal Gear 2 is Metal Gear D, I think is the name of the robot in this game. That's absolutely not the case. The character dramas of the humans absolutely stealing the spotlight from that. The how cool tanks and guns and helicopters and sniper rifles look is absolutely stealing the spotlight from how cool the robots look. And I can't help but get this fun little amusing vision in my head of, like, Team Giant Robot on the staff being a little bit miffy about how Team American military fetishization ended up stealing so much more of the spotlight instead. But anyways, I've been reading on the Twitch chat messages that my audio is having a bit of a popping issue. I'm wondering if I should actually close the stream and troubleshoot on that for a few minutes and bringing it up, but I'm not going to be able to easily test it myself, actually, unless I unmute the stream. Oh my goodness. What in the world? My voice is lower pitched, huh? What? What the hell is that? Okay. Mike is yet using the Onyx Blackjack. Volume itself is quite low. It's the pitch that's, like, really weirding me out. I did have to fiddle with some settings. I had to reinstall OBS on a new operating system. I guess that counts as fiddling with settings, right? But I can't imagine what in the world any of that would have to do with changing the pitch of my voice. I just thought he was... Now I'm getting used to deep bunny hop. No! Do I want an expander or a compressor? I don't think I want either of those. What is VS22X plugin? Alright, let me listen to my voice again. Yeah, it's lower pitched. Okay, that's very, very strange. I also did indeed record a few files to test the audio before starting the stream, and let's test that again. How do I sound? Okay, now how do I sound on the stream? Okay, now how do I sound on the stream?
What in the world?
What in the world? All right, I'm closing OBS and starting it up again. I just re-listened to the test file I made where I sound like I have a normal pitch in my ear, and then I listened to myself on the stream and I had too low of a pitch. What the hell?